Welcome back to the Deepfake Dialogues. Today I'm speaking with Dana Wilson from Wildlife SOS, an Indian nonprofit dedicated to wildlife conservation, rescue, and rehabilitation. Dana has been tracking the growing flood of AI-generated wildlife videos online and working to protect both his organization's real rescue footage and the public's understanding of how wild animals actually behave. Let's dive right in. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dana. So for listeners who aren't familiar with Wildlife SOS, can you give us a quick snapshot of the organization and how central video and visual storytelling is to communicating your conservation work?
Yeah, Wildlife SOS is an Indian-based nonprofit that is focused on wildlife conservation and rescue and rehabilitation. We have 13 rescue centers in India that includes elephants, bears, and leopards, as well as 5 24/7 rescue hotlines. So with those hotlines, we get everything from crocodiles to hyenas to cobras, all sorts of birds that we rehabilitate and release. For animals that were captive, so like the dancing bears, if you're familiar with those, they were made, semi-domesticated or captive animals from a young age. The same with many elephants. They can't be released back in the wild, so we provide them with lifetime care.
So how central is video and visual storytelling to communicating your conservation work?
It's absolutely critical to what we do. India is half a world away from where I am. I'm in Salt Lake City. So in a lot of ways, this addresses me as well. I'm back and forth from India. All my team that I work with is in India. But when it comes down to rescues and some of the things going, I get shared much of the content in real time when we're doing rescues and things like that. So really, part of my job is showing rescue stories and animal stories to connect with people around the world and show them why it's important. India is the largest country in the world now, and they're also one of the few remaining hotspots of biodiversity. They've done an amazing job of protecting all their wildlife, but if things keep going the way they're going, there are going to be some problems with human wildlife conflict, and there are going to be fewer animals in India.
Yeah, and so when did you start noticing AI-generated wildlife videos becoming a problem? And can you walk us through how your own rescue footage has been stolen and repurposed into deceptive content?
Sure. So about a year ago, last spring, I started noticing some videos that were kind of a little too good to be true. The situations were odd and a little bit out of place. It's not uncommon for me to get a lot of wildlife videos. I'm not far from Yellowstone National Park, so we have people, engaging bison, things like that. But the videos started seeing were just a little bit off. At the same time, there were real live videos that were being filmed, and there's a history of it where rescue situations were staged. There was a famous series out of the US where the producers were actually using captive animals and tying them to get some sort of footage. So I've been used to seeing this sort of thing for a while, and it had that same feel to me. And so I'd been watching it closely, and of course, once you click on some of it, you get a whole bunch more. And I woke up early one morning and I shared this video of a moose in an interesting situation. And then later that day, I realized I shared AI and I was part of the problem. For how it impacts our footage and what we're seeing with stolen footage, thankfully, we haven't had a tremendous amount of footage stolen that I've seen, and I will qualify that. But we have had some situations where people have taken an actual rescue, a leopard video rescue, for example, where we saved a leopard from a well. And they mix that real footage with AI footage at the end. So in other words, it was a real rescue. It was edited to take all of our identity and brand out. And then the end of it was AI generated with the leopard being grateful to the rescuers. Which absolutely would not happen. Those leopard rescue situations are incredibly dangerous for our team. And they let the leopards go back in the forest. Um, yeah, and you don't want to be anywhere near the opening of the cage when they open it up.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the fact that there's a leopard video that they took and they at the end they added this like comedic element of the leopard being thankful. Was the intention of the creator basically just satire? Like, what do you think the purpose of this was?
I think it's all just for clicks. I think people create things for clicks, for exposure, for generating revenue, and they just don't understand the implications of what it is that they're doing. Um, and that's the big problem. We don't really understand the true impacts of what some of these fake videos, misrepresented videos, are going to do for wildlife conservation as a whole.
Yeah, but I wonder if they're even if they're doing this for clicks, if they represent animals in like a positive context, even if it's like a misrepresentation, um, how damaging do you think that is?
Well, the big one of the big problems is people not understanding how how to engage with wildlife, that you need to give wild animals space. In India specifically, there are quite a few people killed by wild elephants. Often they're people who are trying to take a selfie. In the West where I am in Yellowstone, you see people trying to get selfies with bison and getting, it's so the more that those kind of situations are misrepresented, that they're safe, that animals are friendly, that they appreciate humans, the more those situations are going to happen. And as they happen, the wildlife loses because usually, law enforcement comes after them, forest department comes after them, something like that, and it's just a growing problem. When you talk about when you ask about the humor. There was a case I was going to talk about in a minute, but there was an AI video that showed some presumably what were forest department officials and a tiger approaching them and grabbing them and dragging them off into the forest. They weren't really identified as a forest department official, so I have to qualify that and be careful. But they were wearing the same kind of uniform. This stoked quite a few fears. There were forest department officials getting questions from people. Um, how did this happen? Do I have to worry? And the huge challenging thing for forest department officials is now they're out of their realm of expertise, which is animal behavior and things like that, because they're being asked to confirm whether a video is real, and their response generally is that didn't happen in my area, which is true, and that's what they know. But at the same time, they're not saying I think that's AI, because they're not AI experts. So it's almost perpetuating. In specifically in that tiger case, somebody replied to that video with an AI video of the tiger bringing the forest department official back and giving them a bottle of water and then going back into the forest. So like somebody replied specifically for humor, to show that the whole video was wrong, but the whole interaction was fascinating.
Yeah, and I think this actually raises an important point because the majority of deepfaked and AI generated content that we see online is just it's AI slop, where it's just parody, satire, just for clicks. It's not really disinformation, in that the creator did not intend to intentionally deceive when they were creating that content. But even if it seems benign, there's still are harms that come out of this. It can become like a public safety threat because people are misled and they're led to believe that these animals behave in ways that they actually don't. And so it's important to highlight that even this content that seems, that we can all laugh at, it's still it can carry real threats.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love to watch wildlife in the forest. It's one of my favorite things to do. I'm an avid bird watcher. You have to approach wild animals carefully and give them plenty of distance. And I think all of these deep fakes like this kind of blur those lines as to what is appropriate, especially when it comes to predators like leopards, tigers. Elephants aren't predators, obviously, but you don't want to run into a wild elephant in the forest, and so people don't understand that, and we're really blurring those lines.
Yeah, and I also want to talk about cases where there are AI generated videos where the animals are represented in a way where they look dangerous and scary, or they're like attacking people, or they're doing harmful things. Or have you seen cases of that? And how many compared to just like the AI flop?
Yeah, actually, there are a ton of those, and that's where some of this got really crazy last fall when I started writing our policies and letting supporters know our specific positions on AI. We were getting tons of leopard attack videos that I was seeing, but they were in ridiculous situations, like in the Western United States or in Canada. An old woman with a dog getting attacked on her doorstep. By a leopard, some of those sort of things. They're probably stoking fear in people who don't quite understand the significance of AI and how serious it is. But obviously, somebody in the Western United States is not going to get attacked by a leopard on their front door. Now, India, that might not be the case. So, so those videos have got much more impact in a place where there may be free roaming leopards at night.
Yeah. And so in the years to come, as deepfake technology continues to improve in terms of both convincingness and just looking more and more realistic, and also it's just becoming so much easier to create deepfakes, and the barrier to creating AI generated content is just collapsing. So anyone can sort of access this now. What do you see the future of the AI generated animal and wildlife content looking like, and what should we be concerned about?
It's only going to get better. It's only going to get more convincing. And that's a huge problem in a variety of ways for wildlife conservation. Probably my initial fear was kind of desensitization. So our photographers work really hard to document real situations. They risk their lives and they bring those to supporters around the world. So they understand the situations, they have a connection with our work, and of course we hope they become supporters. But as those fake videos proliferate, people are going to get more desensitized to this. That's probably one of the big things that I worry about. It will also be influencing people's interactions with wildlife. So either they're more scared, they're calling for killing or culling or things like that of wildlife, or they have this false sense of security around wildlife. So then they start approaching them, and then we have more conflict. And human wildlife conflict across the board is just a huge problem. As humans move into wild spaces, it's just going to keep growing. So the issues with AI and these deep fakes, I just think we're going to keep seeing more problems. We're going to start understanding the impacts of them, and they're going to keep getting better and better. So that's why I've started watching this topic so closely.
Yeah. And I wonder, as deepfakes become better, something that I've been thinking about is whether people will just stop believing what they see automatically on the internet. And maybe they'll start thinking more critically, or maybe this is just wishful thinking on my part about where of the source of the information and where it's coming from, and maybe they'll start paying more attention to that and only believing like trusted sources like Wildlife SOS.
It's interesting that you say that because I've watched using words like unbelievable in my writing because we capture some incredible rescues that you know 100 foot deep well that a leopard has fallen in that we save him out of, and some of those sort of things that the video footage is so good and our team works so hard to get it. They honestly are bordering unbelievable. But now with all the fakes out there, I'm really careful about using words like that because they're true situations.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's actually a shame that that the work that people do, as you mentioned, to capture these videos, and they really put themselves at risk to do this, is what may start being devalued. And we're seeing this not just with wildlife photography and videography, but also all sorts of visual media and humans like creating visual arts, and the risk that that gets devalued as we can just generate AI imagery in seconds. But yeah, that's a big concern for sure.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, what I'm seeing out there, both in writing, in art, and in video, is kind of garbage. It really is. AI
Yes.
slop is a pretty good word for it. Um, so right now, I don't think it's anything like it's going to be in a year or two. This is evolving so quickly that I think that the video that we're going to see is going to be really hard to discern the difference. And if you can't believe your eyes and ears, I it's just going to make things challenging. Everything from political discourse to people, people's engagement, even messages back and forth between two people like this, like the possibilities of having an AI generated conversation with one party not knowing, that's not far off.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's scary. But I know that I'm sorry, India amended its IT rules in late 2025 to require labeling of AI generated content. So what further, first of all, what do you think of that? Do you think it will be effective? And what further steps can countries take to address this issue?
I absolutely think AI content should be labeled, especially online. When I set some policies last summer, I talked to our staff because I'm not 100% opposed to AI. I think it could help us do things more efficiently. More cost effectively help wildlife, things like that. So of course I'm investigating it. I think our team is as well. But what I wanted to make sure was we never at any time used AI to represent a real situation. So that's right. That's right. Immediately, I put a policy in place that said we would never use AI video in any cases of our rescue situations, and I let our supporters know that as well. I did leave the door open for something like, say, we wanted to do a cartoon or an animation or something like that of one of our animals. I've always wanted to do something like that. We have some really, some elephants with incredible character. It would be fun to do something like that. So I don't want to say never, but as of right now, we're not using AI for anything, and absolutely nothing that represents a real situation or looks like a real video. I think social media AI should be flagged as AI. As it improves, I think that's going to be harder and harder to discern. But as AI becomes more powerful, hopefully those tools can help identify AI as well. Because if we're just merging reality and fakes like this, the problems are going to touch everything we do.
Yeah, for sure. So to wrap up, so if you could speak directly to someone who creates or shares these AI wildlife videos, thinking that they're harmless fun, what would you want to tell them?
Um, I would say I understand you're having fun with creativity, and it is a bit of fun. Um, Understand the possible impact that you might be have, the real world impact. It could cause the death of animals. It could cause the death of people. Um, and I don't think that's the intention of the videos. I would say if you're really determined to create videos like this, make sure that they are pretty obviously fake. um, I'd prefer that you didn't have anything that was a rescue situation, because rescues are misrepresented, and they encourage people to even do live situations where they might put a puppy and a snake together or something like that for real. Which there are quite a few videos like that floating around. So just think about the impacts of what you're doing, and just if it's in fun, make sure people understand it's in fun. The more real it gets, the more problems it's going to cause.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me today, Dana. This is super important work that you're doing, and I'm glad that you're speaking out about the AI generation issue, because that's only going to become a bigger problem.
Thank you. I'm going to try to get an intern to start tracking some videos for us, and we can do something a little more research based around wildlife, because it's important. And I appreciate people tuning into your podcast. And be sure to follow Wildlife SOS at wildlifesos.org, or our YouTube channel, and you can see some fantastic real
Yeah,
videos, rescue videos on our YouTube
yeah,
channel.
for sure. And I'll make sure to include that in the episode description.
That
So,
sounds great.
yeah, thank you for tuning in. Bye.
Thanks, Ashmita. Bye bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Deepfake Dialogues. If you found this conversation insightful, please follow and leave us a review. It really helps get the word out. See you in the next episode.